I believe that putting excessive focus on barefoot running in barefoot-style shoes or on running form is not the solution to running injuries. Just as likely, it is the cause of injuries. What McDougall advocates flies in the face of the goal that he desires: healthy running. Today I will be reading to you my highlights of Born to Run Barefoot, written by Chas Gillespie. I ran some good times in high school, steadily improved through college and graduate school, and then completed a half marathon in Duluth, Minnesota in 1 hour, 4 minutes and 56 seconds, which qualified me for the trials. Through that time, like many runners, I've dealt with injury, but I've also consistently looked for ways to stay injury-free, both through self-experimentation and reading what other athletes do. One of my interests has been barefoot running because it purports to be a way for runners to reduce their likelihood of injury and a method to get in touch with better running form. While the barefoot running movement has some important things to communicate about the shoe industry, as well as technology and market-based solutions, I fear that it has led many runners astray, creating more problems and injuries than it has solved. It has also consistently posited simple, straightforward, and marketable answers instead of acknowledging the complexity of running form and injury. Born to Run is compelling, and it persuaded readers to consider whether running shoes cause injuries because they are unnatural and, according to McDougall, promote improper running form. Runners had fewer disabilities, a longer span of active life, and were half as likely to die early deaths. Given that running is so good for us and that running injuries are common, if we could discover an injury-proof way to run, then we could solve a large-scale public health problem. Dr. Lieberman's evolutionary argument says that early in human evolution, Africa's landscape was shifting due to climate change, with thick jungles being replaced by expansive savanna. This landscape change selected for endurance. Because food was spread farther apart, energy had to be conserved during locomotion. Further, the ability to hunt was highly valuable because meat is nutrient-rich, so those who could hunt flourished. Distance running may have been an avenue to hunt through the technique of persistence hunting. In this technique, a group of hunters doggedly pursue their prey in the midday heat until it simply collapses from heat stroke. Certain morphological advancements of Homo sapiens would enable distance running as a way of acquiring food, particularly the ability to sweat large amounts, the presence of a springy Achilles tendon, an arch in the foot to absorb shock, and tendons that hold steady the head and long limbs. All these changes, compared to earlier Homo and Australopithecus species, made humans the greatest distance runners to roam the earth. Other species could sprint. Humans could run for hours, even in the heat. The logical conclusion: we were born to run, and born to run barefoot. Running is essentially jumping from one leg to another. Therefore, a forefoot strike is most comfortable when running without shoes on. In practice, if a runner takes his or her shoes off and runs down the block, a forefoot strike is considerably less painful for the feet. A significant aspect of barefoot running form is landing on your forefoot or midfoot. The forefoot strike eliminates the impact transient that would otherwise travel up the leg. A forefoot strike actively engages the tissue on the bottom of the foot, which absorbs force at the moment of impact, and the Achilles tendon, which further absorbs impact, acting like a spring. The study found about double the injury rates with repetitive stress injuries in heel strikers compared to forefoot strikers. That is, rear foot strikers suffered roughly twice the repetitive stress injuries per 10,000 miles run compared to forefoot strikers. It seems that Dr. McDougall has a sturdy platform to stand on when he makes bold assertions like "the best shoes are the worst," "feet like a good beating," and blaming the running injury epidemic on big bad Nike seems too easy, but that's okay because it's largely their fault. In fact, he has taken these claims to their logical conclusion: learn proper barefoot running style and never suffer injuries again. If we look at the greatest runners on Earth, such as Haile Gebrselassie, Kenenisa Bekele, If we look to the greatest runners on Earth, such as Haile Gebrselassie, Kenenisa Bekele, or Bernard Lagat, as models of great running form, certain important patterns emerge. They swing their arms from their nipple to their hip, parallel to the direction of movement. Their backs are straight and tall, with a slight forward lean. At high speeds, they land softly on their forefoot and powerfully paw back from the ground. Their hamstrings pump their feet back under their hips. Their knees drive forward powerfully. They have a high stride cadence. The one best way to run isn't about footwear, it's about form. Learn to run gently and you can wear anything. Fail to do so and no shoe or lack of shoe will make a difference. An experienced coach understands what his or her athletes need. McDougall does not have this knowledge. For example, he passes off inaccurate claims like all that cushioning of running shoes does nothing to reduce impact, as well researched. That particular claim he makes is false, a massive simplification, and here is a simple test. Run 10 miles on trails with roots and rocks while barefoot. See what happens. You might get a metatarsal stress reaction after one run. I believe that putting excessive focus on barefoot running, in barefoot-style shoes, or on running form is not the solution to running injuries. Just as likely, it is the cause of injuries. What McDougall advocates flies in the face of the goal that he desires, healthy running. Dr. Lieberman's data have been used to argue that shoes are not necessary because the human foot and lower leg already have the natural equipment needed to absorb landing force, and shoes just get in the way. It seems to make sense. However, this claim does not automatically follow. Lieberman's data indicates that there is no difference between a barefoot forefoot strike and a forefoot strike in shoes. The impact transient is absent in both bare feet and shoes, as long as you land on your forefoot. Shoes do not matter. Switching from a heel strike to a forefoot strike is a bit like stealing from Peter to pay Paul. The force has to go somewhere, and while the force of landing is smoother and more gradual with a forefoot strike, it still exists, especially in the lower legs. If your lower leg is not strength trained to absorb the transferred force to your calf and Achilles that would otherwise be absorbed by your upper leg during a heel strike, it will break down. The evangelical trumpeting of the pose method by McDougall, Cucuzzella and others is not balanced and potentially dangerous. Do not look at one athlete and think this is perfect form. Do not think perfect form will prevent all injuries. Do not think I should change my form and it will be a seamless process. None of these things are true or useful. Instead of looking at one athlete, look at groups of successful athletes and try to find a common theme or general principle. Instead of believing that form will prevent injuries, make a more comprehensive injury prevention plan discussed later. And never think that making major form changes, especially in your lower body, will be simple. It will not take only a couple of months. It could legitimately take years. The forefoot strike takes stress away from leg structures like the knee, only to place it on the feet, Achilles, and calf. Therefore, a runner who is switching from a heel strike to a forefoot strike is in great danger of injuring those structures. Regular forefoot strikers who have weak musculature in those areas are at risk of developing overuse injuries. The bones of the foot were stronger and more robust in ancient and unshod populations compared with modern shod populations. The reason? Ancient populations walked around without shoes. It takes a lifetime to build up that strength and physical difference. We were born to run, but then we got lazy for a while, so we must rub the rust off before we can perform any athletic feats well. Attempting to run without strength training or flexibility exercises is like pedaling a bike with a rusted chain. It's going to break or not be rideable. So McDougall is taking one culture radically different from our own and recommending that we adopt only one or two of their habits, running form and tiny shoes. This is a reductionist viewpoint that fails to consider how those two habits fit into a larger schematic of health. Running form and small shoes don't sustain themselves, they are sustained by other activities. In his terrific autobiography, The 4-Minute Mile, Bannister describes one of his earliest memories of running on the beach. In this supreme moment, I leapt in sheer joy. I was startled and frightened by the tremendous excitement that so few steps could create. I glanced round uneasily to see if anyone was watching. A few more steps, self-consciously now and firmly gripping the original excitement. The earth seemed almost to move with me. I was running now, and a fresh rhythm entered my body. No longer conscious of my movement, I discovered a new unity with nature. I had found a new source of power and beauty, a source I never dreamt existed. In Born to Run, the traditional running shoe took on a symbolic status as a representation of the failures of the market and technology and the distance between our lives and the lives of earlier humans. In contrast, barefoot running and minimalist footwear became a totem for a comprehensive critique of modernity and American culture, and a reminder of where we as a species came from. It is possible to raise legitimate concerns about technology, the market, and our lifestyles, and yet still believe that barefoot or minimally shod footwear can cause great harm to runners. A civil discussion is achievable only if we don't conflate barefoot running with the larger questions. 10 ways that we know help runners stay healthy. 1. Strength train. 2. Have a consistent, progressive training plan. Coach McMillan of Team USA Arizona told me that most injuries come from the twos: too much, too soon, too fast. In any new training cycle, be sure to start out slow and at low volume. 3. Have a coach. 4. Stretch. 5. Eat a well-balanced, nutrient-rich diet. 6. Sleep a lot and recover. Most recovery from hard effort takes place during sleep. Many of the best runners in the world take long naps. 7. Make adjustments as you go. If you feel chronically tired and stressed, change your training. Go easier and shorter than you planned. If you feel like $1,000,000, don't be afraid to go a little farther than you intended. 8. Improve your running form slowly and steadily over a period of months and years. Do not read the evidence in favor of a forefoot strike and suddenly start landing on your forefoot. You will, I almost guarantee, develop Achilles or foot problems. 9. Run on soft surfaces. 10. Have a game plan in case you sense a minor injury coming on. 11. Pay attention to your shoes. In Born to Run, McDougall views shoe companies' belief that you should buy new shoes every 400 or so miles as a cheap marketing tactic intended to move more product. But unfortunately, even though shoes can be expensive, you probably should buy new shoes about every 400 miles. Strategies that we know help people follow through on goals. 1. Create a reward system. If you had a great run, or if you do all the strength training you're supposed to do, reward yourself. You earned it. Make the reward personally meaningful and positively reinforcing. 2. Make it social. Train with others, or have a similar goal as friends, and report to each other on how training is going. 3. Keep a log. Logs draw attention to behavior you do that you might not realize, and behavior you assume you're doing, but you actually aren't. 4. Make it a habit. 5. Create small goals en route to the main goal, the big cheese, the grand enchilada. Bannister writes, "When the broad sweep of life is viewed, sport, though instinctive, physical, and ephemeral, illustrates a universal truth that most of us find effort and struggle deeply satisfying, harnessing almost primeval instincts to fight, to survive. It gives us all a challenge, a sense of purpose and freedom of choice. It is increasingly difficult to find this in our restricted 21st century lives. The particular target we seek may not be important, but what is important is the profoundly satisfying effort in thought, feeling, and hard work necessary to achieve this success."